The thought came to me because of a Disney movie, Aladdin. Jafar stood beside the Sultan as his advisor, and somewhere in the middle of remembering that story, something shifted in place for me. Before anyone points out the obvious, yes, I know how that story ends. Jafar is probably the worst possible example of what happens when an advisor becomes intoxicated by his own proximity to power. Somewhere along the way, he forgot that he was there to serve the kingdom and began believing the power belonged to him. And perhaps there's a lesson in that too. Throughout history, the people who carried crowns, kingdoms, armies, fortunes, and the weight of entire nations rarely carried that burden alone. Beside them stood trusted advisors, philosophers, scholars, strategists, healers, spiritual teachers, mystics, shamans, and people who devoted their lives to understanding the world, human nature, the movements of power, the lessons buried inside history, and sometimes the quieter currents moving beneath all of it. The person wearing the crown could see a great deal. The advisor was there to see what the crown could not. The wise ones also understood something Jafar forgot. The gift was never theirs to own. Neither was the power. Perhaps that is what it means to become sovereign, to understand the difference between being entrusted with something and believing it belongs to you. I've been thinking about that role ever since, because suddenly something about my own life shifted into place. I am a business intuitive. I laughed when the thought arrived, because the title sounds like something I should have figured out years ago. When I look back across my life, though, I can see the trail of breadcrumbs leading here. 34 years in business and leadership, decades spent watching people make decisions under pressure, watching organizations grow and fracture, watching systems either support the human beings inside them or slowly grind them beneath their own weight. A lifetime of pattern recognition, sharpened first by hypervigilance and then by experience, along with an almost obsessive fascination with why people do what they do, what makes systems hold, where they begin to crack, and how often the truth is sitting quietly beneath the story everyone has agreed to tell. Then came the deeper work, the nervous system, the guided audio experiences, the understanding that a brilliant mind has access to very little of its brilliance when the body believes it is under threat. Sovereign systems, PRISM, with its 5 pillars of physical, relationships, income, spirituality, and mindset. Philosophy, ancient knowledge, wisdom, gathered from people who wrestled with the great questions long before we invented boardrooms, quarterly reports, social media, and artificial intelligence. And right there, sitting deliberately among the other pillars, is spirituality. I put it there on purpose. Somewhere along the way, we began dividing human beings into acceptable pieces. We could bring our intellect into the classroom, our expertise into the boardroom, and our ambition, education, experience, and every polished credential we had collected along the way. But the soul was expected to wait outside. We I walk with God. I believe in Source, the divine. I believe there is a wisdom available to us that reaches beyond the information we can gather, the models we can build, and the data we can place on a screen. My entire life, I have experienced guidance arriving as a thought so clear it stops me in my tracks. I have sat with someone and suddenly known the question that needed to be asked. I have been given words I had no intention of saying until the moment they arrived, fully formed, carrying exactly what the person in front of me needed to hear. I call those moments whisperings, and I have learned to listen. That is the part I'm bringing into my work more fully now. I can read the room and see patterns. I can recognize the architecture beneath a problem and often find the fracture line before the crack reaches the surface. I understand leadership, systems, human behavior, pressure, power, relationships, risk, and the nervous system. I bring 34 years business experience and a lifetime of lessons earned in places I would never have chosen to go. I also bring an intense spiritual connection. I bring my relationship with God, and I bring the knowing that sometimes arrives when I grow still enough to receive what I am being given. That is where sovereign sight came from. Yes, I use tarot. And because I know what that word can mean to people, I want to say this as clearly as I know how. I walk with God. For me, the cards are symbols, archetypes, and stories that create a point of focus, a hinge where the mind can grow still enough to notice what may have been waiting quietly for our attention. They illuminate patterns, open doors, and bring something sitting beneath the conscious mind into view. They give me a place to begin listening. God is the source of my guidance. Perhaps that is the part we have been missing. We have filled our highest rooms with extraordinary intelligence. Experts gathered around tables carrying decades of education, experience, data, research, projections, and opinions. And all of that has value. All of it belongs there. And still, some of the greatest decisions of our lives arrive at the edge of what can be calculated. A family office may have every number in front of them and still feel the tension moving through generations of relationships. A CEO may have a brilliant strategy and sense something inside the organization beginning to shift. A celebrity or professional athlete may be surrounded by advisors, managers, agents, lawyers, and people whose livelihoods are tied to decisions being made, while quietly wondering who in the room is genuinely trustworthy. Who is listening for the thing beneath the words? Who sees the pattern forming before everyone else can name it? And who has the courage to say, wait, there is something here. Let's look again. And who, when the room grows quiet enough, knows how to listen for the whisper? That is the work I'm stepping into. The ancient role of the trusted advisor brought into a modern world that has grown extraordinarily sophisticated while quietly starving for actual wisdom. I bring the business experience, the systems, the pattern recognition, and the understanding of human behavior and the nervous system. I bring philosophy, ancient knowledge, and the hard-won wisdom of a life that has taught me to recognize the architecture of a storm. And I bring my intense connection to God. The whole map belongs in the room. Perhaps that is what the people carrying the greatest weight have been missing. If you are a leader, founder, family office, celebrity, professional athlete, or someone whose decisions carry consequences far beyond yourself, and you are ready to place the whole question on the table, my calendar is open. Bring me the question that has been keeping you awake, business or personal. Bring me the decision that looks perfectly reasonable on paper and still leaves something in your spirit unsettled. Bring me the pattern you can feel moving beneath the surface, but have not yet found the words to explain. You bring the question. I'll bring everything I have learned, everything I have lived, and the wisdom I am given to see what may be waiting for you just beyond the edge of the map.